Hey there folks, this is part one of a series on tuning your banjo, and each video in the series is just going to be a different way to tune your banjo. If you're a complete beginner, then this is going to be perfect for you, but if you also have a little bit more experience, that's totally fine. This might be some stuff you want to brush up on. It might be worth your time as well. But for now, let's start all the way at the beginning. This video is going to help you tune a 5-string banjo specifically. If your banjo doesn't have 5 strings, then this video is not going to work for you. Each different type of banjo, 4-string banjos, 6-string banjos, they're all tuned differently. You can tune them however you want. There are no rules, but conventionally, each banjo is tuned a specific way, and I'm going to focus on that in this lesson. And most conventionally, the 5-string banjo is tuned to what we call open G tuning or standard G tuning. There's a bunch of different tunings that we use, but it's a great place to start, and a lot of music is played in this tuning. Now, you might already know this could be obvious, but the way that we tune the instrument is by turning these pegs on the headstock and here on the 5th string on the neck. If we turn it one way, the note goes up. If we turn it the other way, the note goes down. Pretty simple. And the notes that we tune each string to are specific notes. It's not just random. So every time we tune it in this tuning, it's going to be to specific notes. If you're not familiar with note names, that's totally fine. That's not going to get in your way for this lesson. But if you are interested in learning more about how that works, I'll leave a link to a lesson in the description that'll help you understand note names, where they are on the fretboard, how all of that works. Anyway, on to actually tuning. The way that we're going to tune the banjo today is by ear. I'm going to play each of these strings, and then you're going to listen really carefully to try to match them on your instrument. So really listen deeply to what it sounds like when I play my banjo, then play your corresponding string and listen to what that sounds like and decide if the note needs to go up or down, and then make the appropriate change with the tuners. And we're going to start up here, the short string here, the 5th string, which is tuned to G. Now, if you need to, feel free to go back and listen to that again as many times as you need to in order to get it right. This is something that gets easier with time and repetition, and we're building really important skills with our ears every time we do it. But assuming we got that pretty close, we're going to move on to the 4th string, which is tuned to D. Next, we're going to tune the 3rd string, which, like the 1st string, is tuned to G, but in a lower octave, which means it's the same note, it's just going to sound like a lower version of the same note. So here's the 3rd string, G. Next, we're going to tune the 2nd string, which is tuned to B. And finally, we're going to tune the 1st string, which, like the 4th string, is tuned to D, but this time an octave higher, which again means it's the same note, it just sounds like a higher version of the same note. Okay, so hopefully now your banjo is somewhere in the vicinity of in tune. But for various reasons, it's possible that it is actually still not in tune. For one thing, you might not have much or any experience tuning by ear, so maybe you did the best you could, but it's still not quite right. That's totally fine. This stuff takes time to figure out, but it's worth practicing because there's truly nothing more valuable to you as a musician than your ear. And this is something I just cannot stress enough. Your ear will allow you to learn and play literally anything you want as a musician, as long as you're willing to practice and take the time to figure this stuff out. However, another reason you might not be completely in tune now after going through that process has to do with the physics of the instrument itself. See, the way that the banjo actually works is that the strings are under tension and they're pressing down on the bridge, which is sitting on top of the head of the banjo, which is flexible. And so in that way, it's kind of like the head of the banjo and the strings are pressing against each other. Any changes in the tension of any of those parts is going to affect the tension of the other parts. What that all means is that changing the tuning of one string can change the tuning of all of the strings. It's not always super drastic, but depending on how out of tune your banjo was at the beginning of this process, it could actually have a significant impact. Now, let me demonstrate this with an electronic tuner so you can actually hear and see what's going on. So let's say that I'm going through this process and I tune my 5th string correctly and it sounds like this. That's G, exactly what it's supposed to sound like, but what if everything else is completely out of tune? Well, then obviously I have to go through the same process and tune the rest of the strings, so let's do that. All right, so now I've got the other 4 strings in tune and they sound like they should. But check out what happens if I play the 5th string. That's significantly lower than it was before. I didn't change anything, I just tuned the other 4 strings. And when I compare this G with the 3rd string, which should be the same note, just an octave apart, they do not sound like the same note because the tension of the other strings affected the tension of that string. So now I have to go back and retune the 5th string. Now, again, this isn't something you're always gonna have to do, just going back and forth, retuning every string. But if your banjo is way out of tune, then it's possible you'll have to go over each string maybe twice, 3 times before it all kind of settles in the right spot. Then once it's pretty close, you don't have to worry about that so much. It's just something to keep in mind in case everything seems like it's going wrong. Now, one really common question I get about this is how often should I be tuning my banjo? And the answer is as often as you think you need to. You need to be listening to what your banjo sounds like so that if it sounds like something's off, then you know to retune it. And to a certain extent, you don't need to worry too much if your banjo is going out of tune frequently. I myself tune my banjo many times per day just because of the way the instrument works. If you're playing it, maybe you're bending the strings a little bit, stuff happens. It's gonna go out of tune. So it's not big changes that I'm making, but things will go out a little bit and then I fix it. But you do need to worry if it seems like your banjo is going out of tune immediately, as in you turn the pegs and then the string goes right back to where it was. That means there's something wrong with the tuning pegs, which need to get looked at by a professional. So maybe there's a music store or a luthier you can go to take that banjo to either fix the tuners or maybe replace them, whatever it is, because that should not be happening. What should happen is you tune the string to a certain pitch and then it just stays there. Of course, over time, it's gonna go down a little bit, and as you play it, it'll go down or up or whatever happens, but it shouldn't be happening immediately. So look out for that, but don't be too worried if you find yourself retuning your banjo pretty frequently. Now, one more thing that can happen is that you go to tune your banjo, you check all the notes and they're all in tune, but then you play some fretted notes, especially higher up the neck, and those are out of tune. Why does that happen? Well, usually that happens because the bridge is in the wrong location, and you can totally fix that. There's actually a link in the description of this video to a lesson that'll show you how to set the bridge properly, and that'll help the entire banjo be in tune across the entire fretboard. And so for right now, that's a great way for you to get in tune. There are plenty of other ways to get in tune. There are easier ways, but in terms of developing your ear and understanding how the tuning system of the banjo works, it's a great idea to practice with this video, to go back and watch each of the strings and listen and see if you can get them just the same as they are when I play them. In general, you're not gonna have to, nor will you want to, just hunt down this specific video in order to get your banjo in tune. You'll be a lot faster with it. You'll be able to do it without watching any videos or using any other resources. But for right now, this is a good place to start to get a good understanding of how this stuff works. Anyway, that's gonna do it for part 1 of this series. Make sure you check back in for future lessons in this series. If you're a patron on Patreon, then you'll be notified when those go up. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.